I would like us just to start off by giving a little bit of context. So I've given your titles and everything else, but Marc, could we start with you? Just tell us a little bit about your role at Unilever, and then Caroline and Sandeep.
Yeah, I'm the Chief Supply Chain Officer, so I run all the supply chain operations from procurement, manufacturing, distribution, customer service. Everything that moves in Unilever is being organized by us.
Busy man. Caroline.
So I look after all our corporate affairs and sustainability programs, and my role is really to put sustainability at the heart of our business at Landsec.
And can I just ask, you told me you've taken on a new part of your role, breaking news, and just mention a little bit about how that's come about and the importance of sustainability within the corporate culture at Landsec.
Absolutely. So sustainability is really key to our business and our brand and how we describe ourselves to our customers and what we do. So it's a natural fit for us to also be responsible for corporate affairs in the organisation.
Sandeep.
Hi guys, Sandeep Verma, Managing Director for Allbirds for Europe. So I launched us into Europe just over a year ago in the UK. For those of you who don't know Allbirds, which is I'm guessing probably most of the room, we're all about sustainable, super comfy, simply designed sneakers. So been going to the consumer since March 2016 from San Francisco. Lucky enough to sell just over 1 million pairs of shoes in just under 2 years. And very similar to the one that I'm wearing, and that's about as high as my foot can go. And yeah, using premium natural materials, so excited to be here and talk about the business case.
Okay, terrific. Now, you will have seen a question mark on your app. If you have got any questions which you'd like me to put to our panellists today, do send those through, and as and when I will try to include them. Now, starting off, I'd like to just start with you, Marc. None of the companies here are big energy-intensive industries necessarily. So where is the pressure actually coming from for lowering emissions?
Well, you can answer the question in many ways, but first on the macro level, we all need to do our part, because if we want to be carbon neutral by 2050, which is what the world needs to survive, then it doesn't matter how energy intensive you are, you all need to do your bit. So that is the first bit. The second bit is the interesting bit, is that when you take a cradle to grave cycle of our product, actually only 5% of the carbon footprint is in our own company. About a quarter of the footprint is upstream with our suppliers in agriculture and making packaging and all this kind of stuff. But the biggest footprint is in your home. When you make your cup of tea, when you wash your clothes, when you wash your hair under the shower. And so if you're in a fast-moving consumer good and a branded goods company, a very big part is actually innovating a range and portfolio that can help you as a consumer reduce your footprint. So we don't necessarily only look at our own footprint, it's an important part, but it's only 5% of the total value chain of the products that we sell. And if you take the total value chain, it's actually a significant carbon footprint that we stand for.
Caroline, talking about homes, you're one of the UK's biggest commercial landlords, correct? Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about how you are trying to meet that need.
Yeah. So Landsec's one of the UK's largest commercial property companies with a large commercial office and retail portfolio across the UK. We recently came out with our new sustainability strategy, which is all about getting to net zero by 2030. And as Marc was saying, we've also done some quite detailed reviews of where our impacts are across our supply chain and across our different scopes. And for us, there's two really key areas to focus on: our new developments and how we construct them. Looking at every choice of material, where it's from, how it's constructed, what its embodied carbon profile is, and then actually looking at how the buildings are then used by our customers, and focusing on there as well on energy reduction.
And we'll dig a little bit deeper into some of the specifics of how you're doing that later. Sandeep, in terms of you, it's obvious why you guys have created this shoe. So where was the need found, and how are you meeting it?
It's a great question. So actually our first insight wasn't to create a sustainable shoe, it was to create a beautifully designed shoe which was actually simple. And that was the very first insight our co-founder had. And actually that came from the idea that footwear more generally is an industry which has been had a low-cost mentality to it. It's been an industry that quite often has been fueled by wholesalers. So it's been about a flurry of products because people need stuff to sell to get consumers in. And we thought, well, actually, why not strip that stuff away and focus on creating a beautifully designed shoe that just is sustainable? So I think maybe where Allbirds is slightly different to some of the companies in the room, sustainability has been at the heart of what we do since day one. It's just how we operate. So we're a public benefit corporation, a B Corp. And that's meant that we have a legal requirement to both deliver stuff for our shareholders in terms of healthy money.
Is anyone else, if you could raise your hand, anyone else in this room a B Corp organisation yet? One? Okay.
We have one, yeah. So
are you guys aware of what B Corp is? Yeah? Okay.
So there's about 2,500 B Corps across the globe. And, you know, we like it because it becomes this overarching requirement, and it's audited and it's external accreditation. It means that sustainability isn't just on the side, it's not an add-on. I think that's where businesses run into trouble, and particularly in the environment that we're in right now where people are trying to scrabble to get stuff in shape. It needs to be at the heart. And in the consumer world, we believe that it's not just about creating sustainable products, but it's about creating great products that people want. And particularly, I think in the UK, what we've seen in Europe as we start to expand, there's a real powerful need from our consumers who are just expecting this. And they're not expecting to compromise on price or quality or comfort. They just expect brands to take care of it. And I think, as you said right at the beginning, expect businesses to shoulder the burden and be a force for good. And we think that's quite powerful.
Talking about that sustainability as an add-on, Marc, Unilever has had sustainability at its heart for many years. We've actually created a chart, which I'm hoping Monty can bring up. He's created this for me today, which is actually showing the number of times that sustainability or sustainable has been used in annual reports for Unilever since 2007 until today, which I think is really interesting in its own right. And we've got a similar one for Landsec, which we'll bring up in a little bit. So I'd like to pick up on Sandy's point about customers. How is it you communicate to your customers the message about sustainability when they're buying a Dove soap or a Hellmann's mayo or Wall's ice cream? Yeah.
Well, you know, going back actually, one of the founders of our company, Lord Lever-Hughes, 130 years ago had his mission to make sustainable living commonplace. So it goes right back to the foundation of the company. And we've had our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan that we launched in 2010. Where we basically said we want to double the size of our business and make a positive social imprint and halve our environmental footprint. And we did that because by putting it out there, we thought that we would make everyone's role in the company about sustainable, not just a couple of people who sit in a basement somewhere doing CSR, but to really bring it at the heart of the business. And when you're a branded goods business, as you were talking about, you know, first of all, we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort on consumer insight. We sell to 2.5 billion consumers in 190 countries. 2/3 of those consumers are actually saying that they choose brands that are not only good for themselves, but also have some kind of stand on societal issues. Can be about environment or can be about social issues, etc. When you drill into that consumer group and you look at Generation Y, the millennials, and Generation Z, that number goes up to over 90%. So people do care about brands with purpose, sustainable brands. We also know that brands with a very clear purpose and stand on societal issues have more relevance, can command better prices, have more talkability, drive better penetration, and have, let's say, fewer pressure on price elasticity. So it is good business as well. And when we look at our results, in our 400 brands today, 28 brands, and you mentioned Dove, you know, everybody knows Ben & Jerry's campaigning for social justice and climate change, Dove working on young people and self-esteem, there's Tresemme working on women's confidence in the workplace. We have 28 of these brands. They grow 69% faster than the rest of the business. And in fact, last year, 75% of the total growth of Unilever came from these 28 brands. So if that is not a clear business case for sustainability, then it's pretty hard to deny that. So, consumers want it, and therefore we focus very much, as we're a stable of brands, to make sure that our brands have a very clear purpose. And that can be many different things. It has to be relevant. Of course, you can never forget let's say, a bad product with a strong purpose will not deliver. It's always product performance. I was talking with Sandeep this morning. If the product is not good, it's great that it has a societal impact, but then it doesn't work. But when that total mix come together, consumers will buy it, and it's very clearly with that generation Y and Z being the consumers of today and the future. This is where things are going. So that's where you just have to be as a company.
Caroline, maybe we can have a look at the chart for Landsec as well. So you'll see a very similar trend. And is that the same for you? Are you noticing that real business case?
Yeah, there's absolutely a very strong, there's a strong moral case and I think very strong business case. So for us, we've been looking at these topics for years, but I think what you see there is the badging together of this under the sustainability banner. For us, it's about license to operate. So if we want to be getting planning permission for new schemes, we need to show how our developments are at the heart of communities and are making a positive impact to the environment. For our investors, I know on the next panel we'll be talking about climate risk, but for real estate, it's essential to be able to show our investors how we're thinking about climate change and how that affects our buildings and our assets. And lastly, for our customers, so our customers would be large corporates taking office space. Buildings and where we work are a physical manifestation of the companies we work for, and so it's really important that they represent the brands that are in those buildings and show a strong sustainability credential.
No better place to be doing it than here. I have a question from Victor, which I'd like to put to you, Sandeep. Sure. A popular quote is that consumers care about products that are sustainable. From statement to action, do you see this statement translated into actual consumer choices, advocacy and activism? I wonder, for you in your company that can be very fast in responding to consumers' insights into your products.
Absolutely, unequivocally. Product has to perform, so for us, our functional benefit is all about superior comfort, and it helps when Time magazine calls you the world's most comfortable shoe on day 2, but they care. And what we're seeing in Europe more broadly, and we're now operating in 13 countries, is particularly, I'd say, amongst like 20 to 35, they not only care, but they vote. And the story, we're a direct-to-consumer brand, and this is important, I think, as part of this discussion, because that means that we control the entire ecosystem. We don't have wholesalers at the heart of what we do. We have consumers. We're obsessed with insights, and we get to focus on probably doing 3 things. The first thing is making sure we tell our story. So we have a purpose, but it's about telling that story, and then we ruthlessly focus on improving our product. So the shoe I'm wearing at the moment has had something like 40 tweaks to make it that ever so slightly better since it's been in market, and then it's about the care, and the care is where the insights come from, and those insights tell us day in and day out that they care and they act. And the micro level example, we changed the copy on our homepage to talk a little bit more about sustainability than comfort, and traffic demo spikes between 18 and 30. We see it.
Wow. I'd like to stick with Sandeep for a moment and do a poll question, so do grab your phones. This is around carbon emissions in the fashion industry. So the annual carbon emissions produced by the fashion industry are equal to, and you're going to have 3 options pop up, the same as the entire European Union, the same as Spain, or the same as the continent of Africa. So we will be getting that. Oh, not that one. Here we are. Not that one. We're nearly on to the next one.
As long as we don't put the answer up.
Yeah. Here we go. The annual carbon emissions produced by the fashion industry are equal to the European Union, Spain, the continent of Africa. A very sustainably savvy bunch here. Yes, it is A, the entire European Union. I mean, I was looking at some data saying that in 2015, textile production created more greenhouse gas emissions than international flight and maritime shipping combined. And yet we see in America alone, women are buying something like 64, and I don't want to just say women here. I am a charity shopper, but generally we buy a lot of clothing every year, and a lot of it is not worn all that often.
Yep.
How conscious would you say your customers are about waste and buying often, and what sense are you getting that they're really looking at these issues in particular and not just about the comfort of the shoe?
Yeah, I'd say this bunch that we're talking to, millennial Gen Z, not only do they care, but they're well researched. So, people know that there is a level of unhealthy consumption that's going on, and I think there's plenty of examples, particularly in the world of fast fashion, that some of this stuff just doesn't make sense. So they're definitely aware of it. I think the way that we think about it is people are going to still need to buy stuff, but buy better. And we did an event in Black Friday. We took a slightly different stand, and instead of going, we don't discount our products, but instead of going kind of crazy sales and forcing lots of retail activity, we actually closed the store for business and opened it up for creativity. And we did workshops based on each of our materials. And the reason we did that is we wanted our consumers to go away asking questions. What impact is the brand that I'm buying having? What are the materials made of?
Yeah.
And we think that actually can be quite a rational discussion. So, we're not thinking about sustainability. That's just how we operate. But our approach on it, and where we're trying to work with other brands to encourage it, is clearly just about the carbon footprint. And we talk about three things. The first thing is measure your footprint. The second thing is offset it whilst you can. And the offsetting plays an important role because it puts a cost in your business that incentivizes you to work down. But the most important, the third part, is reduce it. So actually the soles of the shoe that I'm wearing right now, and that's quite often the biggest component of the shoe, is made from, the foam's powered from sugarcane and not from petrol. And that's a new technology that we created with a Brazilian multinational company. And I think that's important, right? Because measuring and offsetting helps us understand the issue and do something in the short term, but real innovation is where we're going to get to the real solution of reducing it.
Can I pick up that point on innovation, Marc? I've got a question from Kevin. How do you square off the trade-off between sustainable sourcing and cost increase? Because innovative materials initially cost more until they scale.
Yeah, you have to see that as an investment, but I also think you have to, very often you have to have the belief, because if you have that financial discussion, you usually talk yourself out of things. And I think what we have seen so far is that whether you talk about carbon or sustainable sourcing or whatever, is that if there is an initial cost, it is very much an investment with a very clear payback. But many times also, we have just announced our renewable electricity commitment on 5 continents. We've done that this year now. So on 5 continents, all of our electricity is coming from renewable sources. Didn't cost us anything extra. Because we had a very clear plan. In 2016, we launched an internal carbon tax in the company. So we said, rather than paying and waiting until we pay it to a government, let's just put this in a pot. And that pot we used for what we call a clean tech fund, making investment in reduction of energy in the company. We reduced our energy by 25%. That generated a lot of cost savings, and we used those cost savings to then invest in making the rest of our electricity green. So there is no on-cost. I think very many people are still in the notion of, well, this costs money, where's the payback, etc. And I think if you look innovatively at many things, that paradigm of it costs money or there's no payback is actually flawed, because it does give consumer benefits, it does give consumer choice, it does drive brand preference, and very often also it saves costs rather than increases costs.
I'd like to pull up another chart here. It's actually around Landsec and your greenhouse gas emissions. And I think it's particularly interesting because we know that the real estate sector is responsible for around 30% of carbon emissions. You can see how Landsec's doing in terms of its GHG emissions. But the bulk of emissions over the life of a building aren't coming from energy use. They're coming from the steel and the glass and the cement embedded in the structure, those embedded emissions. What's your thinking about how the real estate industry can tackle that problem in the future, and what solutions are you guys coming up with?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate the previous point. Sustainability doesn't need to be an additional cost. I think that's quite out of date now. So on, some of the simple things, lighting upgrades, that sort of thing, they pay back in less than a year. So the business case is so strong. For us, our impact is very much at the construction side, and so we're very focused there. And the sorts of things we're doing is looking at all of our materials. We're moving back to timber structures. So some of our new developments are using a hybrid steel and timber frame rather than just steel, which significantly reduces embodied carbon. Working with our architects and our engineers, trying new ways of building buildings so that they're lighter and leaner, and that saves carbon, but it also saves costs, so it's a double win. Looking at the role of innovation, so we're heavily looking at off-site manufacturing and modern methods of construction. So some of our new developments are testing building part of the structures off-site, and then they come and put them together on the site. And this reduces the carbon, it massively reduces the pollution impacts of construction and waste as well. So looking for what the overall wins are.
What about pre-existing buildings? How are you upgrading those to make them more efficient?
Yeah, so for the pre-existing ones, I think sometimes people often jump to the immediate high-tech solutions, and if you look certainly at the UK's building stock, there's still a lot to be done of just simple, good energy management, upgrading lighting. So that's the kind of that's job number one. Then following on from that, looking at how more new technologies can be retrofitted, so solar panels on roofs, upgrading boilers, that sort of thing. And so for us, it's just part of how we run and manage those buildings, putting those upgrades in, making sure that they're efficient, and that's what's led to the reduction you saw on the screen.
I'd like to give you each an opportunity for a final question, just to outline the ambitions that you have to reduce your carbon footprint and how that's going to impact the overall level of emissions that your company supports. So if I start off with Sandeep, what are your plans for 2020 and beyond?
So we're coming, I think, from a good place. We are carbon neutral today across our entire supply chain. And the biggest part of that for us is we use premium natural materials that have a lower carbon intensity. So the average pair of Allbirds gives about 10 kilograms of carbon end-to-end, including my journey.
How does that compare with another pair of...
So typical pair of shoes, maybe with trainers, maybe 30 or 40 kilograms. Okay. So we're already super low because of the carbon intensity and the innovation. But then we offset that. So our game really is about continuing to innovate more materials to solve other solutions through design. And hopefully, really the bigger purpose for Allbirds is we talk about doing better things in a better way, but really our bigger purpose is to try and serve as somewhat of a catalyst for the sustainable manufacturing revolution we have. So if we could help other brands make stuff in a better way, then great. And example of that, this technology we're talking about here, we open sourced that. So we've made it available to over 100 companies that have signed up for it. You might have seen some stuff recently in the press where a certain large retailer has decided to do something quite similar, and we've actually encouraged that retailer to steal our sustainability. So I think we want to keep doing what we're doing, but we know also that footwear alone is a big industry, $200 million. Our mission's only going to work at scale, so we're happy with what we've done so far, but there's a lot to do.
Marc?
We are concerned about two things on the Paris Agreement. A is that 2050 is an awful long time away. And the other big thing, there is a big concern about the net. Because if nobody actually reduces carbon but just offsets and just keeps doing what they're doing, you're not actually going to change anything, and there won't be enough offset space in the world to do that. So we very clearly said we want to significantly be faster than the Paris Agreement. We also have 2030 in mind to become carbon neutral. We already have all our electricity carbon neutral today. We have 26 of our factories are already carbon neutral, and they're growing by the week. So we want to do our own operation significantly faster, hopefully by the end of next year, or if not the year after. And then basically going up in the chain and continue to drive innovation. When we convince you to wash your clothes at 30 degrees instead of 40 degrees, we take a lot of carbon out of your footprint. So we continue to develop products that require less water, less energy, less carbon, and let's say a big drive inside our company on reducing our own carbon footprint, and that bring the suppliers with us to do the same. and retailers to do the same, so that we're looking at making that whole chain carbon neutral.
Caroline, finally.
We're committed to being a net zero carbon business by 2030. And for us, that means a 70% reduction in our carbon reduction in our operational portfolio. It also means working really closely across our supply chain to ensure that all our new developments going forward are net zero. So the examples I gave before of how we construct the buildings, just absolutely laser focus on that and reducing our footprint further. Offsetting is great, so we're committed as a business to offset the residual, but the lion's share of the attention has to be on the actual reduction in our own business and then offsetting what remains.
Thank you very much to all of my panel. Please give them a warm thanks.